And hello to you today. Today, what I'm going to do is show you how I can make sauerkraut, how easy it is to make sauerkraut at home. And I'm in the travel trailer, so if you've seen the previous video where I talked about how cold it is outside, in fact, it is raining, sleeting at this moment. It's like I picked the worst time to come camping. I put off coming last week because it was supposed to be really cold, and it turned out to be beautiful and sunny and 70 degrees days. And I came out, didn't come out because it was going to be 32 in the 20s at night. So I figured this week would be good. Yeah, a little bit of rain wouldn't hurt me. However, I'll pop in a couple pictures of outside that I just took. I went to go to my truck because in the back of my truck I have some spices and some vinegars and some things that I was bring into the truck, and I figured I'd do it today. I didn't do it last night or yesterday afternoon because it was raining when I got here, and I figured I'd do it today because they said the rain would let up. Well, as you see, the back of the truck is frozen from the freezing rains, and I can't get there. So I'm going to work with what I have. And what I have is sea salt, which I would use anyway. I was going to use Himalayan sea salt. Well, it's not sea salt, but Himalayan salt, or some sea salt that I brought with me. But this is a grinder, and it's got salt in it, so I'm going to use this. And then I always like to put some different kind of flavor when I'm making the sauerkraut, because you can just do it with salt. Sometimes I put caraway seeds in it, sometimes I put fennel in it. So this time I'm using celery salt, and I'm going to stick a little pepper in it this time. Now, all of your recipes just call for salt. That's it, salt. That's all it takes, salt and the cabbage. But I'm going to put a little black pepper in it for seasoning. Now here I am, I'm in the camper. I don't have any canning jars with me, but I've got an old tahini jar. It's glass. It's got a metal lid, which most canning jars have. And I will be putting the cabbage in this in order to give it the spot for it to do. Now you can keep it in a bowl as long as it's covered. This is the bowl I'm going to put it in initially. I'll tell you why. However, I put it in a jar because I'm really only making enough for me. And that's the key with my cooking videos and the things that I do. This is cooking for one or two. Again, this is making sauerkraut for me, for one person or two in case I have company. I'd like to have some company when I come camping sometimes, but this trip was designed to do some writing, to make some videos. I was planning on doing this video. Anyway, so that's what I'm doing. And I'm going to be making this especially for you. Now I'm going to make sure the camera is good. I'm not going to get too close. Just a little bit. Just to show you, I am in my camping trailer. This is my kitchen area, right? And this is my table. Let me come out. No, not that way. That way. So my table and my couch and my bathroom is back over there. So just showing you, I really am in the travel trailer. Okay, let's do that. Come down a little bit more. All right, now let's get started. So I've taken off the outer leaves, and I've had this cabbage for a little while. So I'm going to tell you, you don't have to have had just gotten it from the store, or if you just picked it out of your garden. If you grow cabbages, I've done that before. This year I'm not going to grow cabbage. I'm trying mustard greens this time. Anyway, so I'm going to cut this guy in half. The key with this, some people, they'll put them in their blender or their food processor in order to chop it up. However, I just get pleasure. Oh, and this is one of those clear cutting boards, not a wood board. I get pleasure sometimes. I think it helps me vent and get rid of some of the tension in my body. You know, some of that cortisol stuff. Now, I have a philosophy, and you may not agree with my philosophy. So I wash the outside of the cabbage. I have taken off the outer leaves and then washed the outside of the cabbage. And so cut it in fourths. Let me go back to the teaching piece. Cut it in 4 pieces. Slice this in thirds, right? And you could really slice it a little bit more. It all depends on you and how you want to do it. Some people, they just cut it like that and they're satisfied. Well, I know when you buy sauerkraut in the can, it is long and stringy, and I just kind of chop it up, kind of like if I was making coleslaw. Right? And sometimes what I do is I take and only use a half a head of cabbage. However, this is a small head. Now, what I was about to say is this. So I washed the outside of the cabbage after I took off the leaves, the dead leaves, the dried out leaves. And my philosophy is this. Cabbage grows from the inside out. And when you take off the outer leaves and you get down to the real base inner leaves, I mean, you take out all of those outer leaves and you wash those the outer side of the cabbage, you don't have to do the washing of it. Now, some people will disagree with me, but when it's from the inside out, I'm going to tell you, nature is the best disinfectant. If you buy non-organic cabbage, you do the same thing. Okay, so here's my cabbage. I've got a couple pieces I need to chop up some more. Non-organic cabbage, you do the same thing because it grows from the inside out. So any sprays that is there is going to be on the outer leaves. So if you've never seen cabbage grow, I'll see if I can find a picture of my cabbage that I grew in my garden. You will see the outer leaves. Think of the leaves you see that are big on the outside of cabbages, or your broccoli leaves, or any of those kinds of things. Plants. And you will find that they grow from the inside out. So here's my outer leaves, and these are the inner leaves, and look how tight they are together. These outer leaves have protected the rest of the cabbage, and therefore nature takes care of. I took out the core, another piece of core there. This outer leaf is a little weak. I'm going to throw it away. Nature has distilled water inside this plant, the cleanest water. Therefore, I'm not washing this cabbage, because even though I have a filter outside on this, this water isn't as clean as the water inside my cabbage. Just checking inside my cabbage. Yes, where was I? Anyhow, so I'm cutting these up, making them small. I discovered fermenting because a friend of mine said to me, come to this fermentation class with me. I'm going, what? What's a fermentation class? And I went and found out how to make kombucha. I think I've got a video for that. I'll see if I can find the link and put it up top, you know, like up top somewhere. Anyway, and I learned about cabbage. Did you know you could ferment potatoes? Potatoes can be, but you've got to blanch them first. You can't just cook them or ferment them as they are. And you can put in there, and you've seen these in the store, these pickled vegetables. And the key that our ancestors knew but didn't know they were probably just preserving the cabbage or their vegetables through the winter. You know, it wasn't like today where we get vegetables from all over the world. Alright, you know what? I'm looking at how much cabbage I've got from just a half a head. And I'm going to test this a little bit. See what happens. I'm going to take it back out, but I want to see how full this is going to get. Because if it gets too full, okay, alright. I can do another third. You're going to say, well, what are you going to do with the other piece? I am going to have that for dinner. How's that? I am going to have it for dinner. How am I going to have it? I'll probably steam it in the microwave, because here in the camper, cooking, especially since I can't really open the door or windows because of the rain, has a lot of condensation. And when you cook, the walls can start to sweat. Yeah, the walls will sweat, the windows are sweating, they're already sweating. So the heat in the air, you breathe out water when you're breathing. And when it hits the cold air or something cold, just like on the window, it will cause condensation. So my cooking, I had planned to cook outside too, because this camper has an outside cooking area. Perfect, with the grill and a refrigerator, which right now is not plugged in. I unplugged it. It's a regular refrigerator, so it only runs on when I plug it into an outlet, the camper into an outlet, and have electricity. That's why I can use the fireplace to heat up while I'm in here, and that. Anyway, I was going to cook outside. However, because I can't cook outside, and I can't open my vent in my bathroom because it's raining. Therefore, I can't equalize the air a little bit. I could open one of the windows. Again, it's raining. Can't open the front door, it's too cold. So, I have to do things to minimize the amount. See, that was a lot of cabbage on that one. To minimize the amount of moisture here in the cabin. Listen to me, I wonder why I'm calling it a cabin. Is that something for my future? I'm going to have a cabin sometime in my future? That would be nice. Cabin and my travel trailer, that would be nice. Alright, yeah, this is, yes, more than enough. Now, those of you who have got family, and you might have a big crock or a larger jar, then you can do the whole head of cabbage or multiple cabbages. People have crocks, I mean, you know, big containers that are designed for fermenting cabbage and vegetables and that kind of thing. But I'm just doing it in the jar. Because, again, it's just for me. Alright. So now, I have this cabbage. And the cabbage is all chopped up. Now, it will shrink in a little bit because the salt will bring out the water. I don't measure when I'm putting the salt on. So for those of you who are beginning with this amount of cabbage, you might want to try a tablespoon of salt. Yes, that much. A tablespoon of salt. The salt is going to draw the water out of the cabbage. So if you've done coleslaw before and you put a little bit of dressing on it, right? You stir it up. You let it sit for a while. You come back, and where'd all this dressing come from? It's watery. Well, what happens is that dressing, as well as the salt, the celery salt and my sea salt, is going to draw the water out of this cabbage. And that's what you want it to do. You don't really want to add water to this, but you're creating a brine with the amount of salt, and that is what preserves the cabbage. So my thing is, I'm just going to sprinkle the celery salt pretty thickly. So I'm going to get a lot of celery taste. Now, when I cook cabbage, I use celery. I put celery in it. I put onions, maybe green peppers. Alright, now I'm using the sea salt. And since this is a grinder, it's going to take a while. So, or maybe not. It's doing pretty good. Anyway, so I tell people when somebody says, but it's just me. Why should I do that? I said, why not? Just you. I mean, are you... Now, I'm talking to a woman here. So are you just going to wait for a man to come along for you to be able to do something? Or a good girlfriend who would like to do the thing that you want to do? Because sometimes that's... if I had waited, if I wait for friends or wait to have a man in my life, boy, I would have been sitting on my butt, sitting on the couch, not doing very much of anything. However, I did have a man in my life when I had to pop up, and I had more unfortunately, we had more issues, especially when we were setting up and taking down the pop-up. It was like, it was always a struggle. And the first time I did it by myself, it was like quick. So I don't know what the miscommunication was for us. But there was miscommunication. So as you notice, I am stirring up the cabbage after I put the celery salt and the sea salt on the cabbage. Alright, just a little bit of pepper, not a lot. I mean, that wasn't even 1/8 of a teaspoon. So 1/16 of a teaspoon of pepper. Some people like a lot of pepper. For those of you who like a lot of pepper, you can put cayenne pepper on here. You can put pepper flakes. You can season. Now, you might not see this in other places, but you can season cabbage any way you want. I could chop up onion. Ooh, I could chop up an onion and put it in here too and give it some additional flavor. And I think I have an onion that's already peeled. Now, if I don't have an onion that's already peeled, then I guess I won't be chopping up an onion in here. Guess what? I have an onion already peeled. Last night I made my personal kind of guacamole. So this is half of a avocado. And you're going, she's really doing this. Yes, I'm doing this. I love to experiment. Now, you can ferment onions. You know, there's pickled onions. You ever heard of pickled onions? Yeah. And you're going, well, what will that do to the cabbage? I don't know. All I know, it's going to add some flavor to the cabbage. I got a little piece in here that's not too good. Middle of the onion. Sometimes onions do that. Right in the middle, it starts going bad. Alright. So what am I going to do? Alright. Let me put it back on here like this. And let's see what we're going to do. Slice this guy down. So you are experiencing a new recipe in the making. I do this all the time. It's like, well, what would it taste like if I do this? What would it be like? And you should ask yourself that question all the time. What will it be like to try this or add this? Oh yeah, I've done things and I've had to throw them away because they were not very good, but this will be good because I love onions. When I cook my sauerkraut, when I cook it, some people eat it raw. I wind up cooking it. So when I cook my sauerkraut or my cabbage, I put onions in it. Also, when I cook my sauerkraut, I'll put an apple in it to give it a little bit more sweetness. So a sweet apple, like a delicious apple. Any kind of apple that's super sweet. You know, one day I might try pineapple. Right in there. Alright, this is really a weird cut up. But I think you see what I'm doing. This is going to be a different flavor for my sauerkraut. Now the basic sauerkraut recipe, basic sauerkraut recipe is cabbage and salt. That's it. Cabbage and salt. Now, I'm doing cabbage and salt and celery salt and onion and a little bit of pepper because I'm doing it. So that's why I named this How to Make Cabbage Beverly's Way. How to Make Cabbage for One. I think that's what I'm naming it when you see the title. How to Make Cabbage for One Beverly's Way. For Beverly's taste, for Beverly's ideas, and that's a lot of onion, which I love a lot. I don't know about y'all, but I love myself some onion. Okay. I think those are chopped up enough. So what was that? About a half an onion that's left. Alright. I'm telling you, my little electric heater, it is getting warm in here. I'll turn off the one. So hold on, let me turn it. Little floor heater, I turned it off because I'm starting to sweat. That's not a good thing, because now I got to check the windows to see if there's condensation. No condensation on the ceiling. That's a good thing. Alright, so there's the onion. We're going to mix the onion in there. So I got, let's see, at least a tablespoon of salt. So in this amount, and what you can do, as this is starting, the salt is pulling the water out, and you can see it glistening, or hopefully you can see it glistening. But I'm going to take a taste of this, see if it's salty enough, and I may need to add a little bit of salt. Okay. Nope, it's salty enough. Boy, it's salty enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm pushing this down, because what you want to do is get the cabbage so it will release its water. Now I'm going to set this aside. I'm going to turn off the camera. I'm going to set this aside. Yeah, not sit. Set this aside and let it do its thing. Just like when you're doing coleslaw and you put in the dressing and you put it in the refrigerator. Now this I'm not going to put in the refrigerator. I'm just going to mash this down like this. Now, thankfully it's winter time and I don't have any bugs in here, but, you know, because in the summertime you can have little gnats and all those kind of things. So I'm going to take this and I have some napkins here. Alright, so I have a napkin. You can use a dish towel, wax paper, anything to basically cover it up. And we're going to leave this covered for about an hour. And then I'm going to come back, take this off, and I'm going to stir it up again. Mash down the cabbage. So you do this about once an hour, once every 45 minutes or so for about 2 or 3 hours. So you're off doing other things and every now and then you go, oh, I need to go stir the cabbage. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm turning off the camera and I'm going to go study something or read. In fact, I've got this new book called Mind of God. Let me show you the cover. Okay, Mind of God, and it's by Dr. J. Lombard, Neuroscience, Faith, and a Search for the Soul. And it is a foreword by Patrick J. Kennedy, Ted Kennedy's son, because he had brain problems, injuries, and that kind of issue. So we're going to take I'm reading that. I'm in it now. I'm on page 36. So that's what I think I'm going to do while I wait for it's time for me to restir the cabbage. I'm going to take this one, put it in the refrigerator till later so I can cook it for my dinner. Oh, there was one other thing I was going to show you. And I'll be making a video of this. I am sprouting mung beans. So when you buy bean sprouts in the store, you can buy these things called mung beans. And I'm doing that here while I'm there. And they're starting to sprout. I started this at home and I brought them with me. And they are starting to sprout. So there's a lot of things you can do while you're in a trailer. And notice I have a small jar with a small amount because I'm making them just for me. That'll be another video in the future. Okay, an hour has gone by. Let me think. An hour has gone by, so let me uncover. And now I'm going to take and turn and mash. There's a little bit of water here. Now, one of the things we know that if there's not enough water after we do this, then we can add some brine water. And I think that's what's going to happen here, because like I told you, this cabbage was sitting in my refrigerator for a little while. I just never got to it. So, okay. Now the phone would ring. Hold on a second. Alright, I've come back. I've stirred the cabbage multiple times. And what's happened here is it doesn't have a lot of water. So what I'm going to do after I put the cabbage in the jar, I am going to add some salted water. Now, I told you I left my salt in the car and I didn't want to go through and have to grind up that salt, and I needed that salt. So yeah, it's still frozen outside. Doors are still frozen. In fact, it's still sleeting outside and raining. So it's not raining to melt the ice, it's raining to add more ice. Anyway, so here I've got 12 ounces of distilled water. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour out a few ounces of it, get me down to a cup. Now, what I have here is Soleil water, so you can look that up, S-O-L-E, Soleil water. It's 26% salt water, saturated. In fact, it is so saturated, there's salt in the bottom. In fact, I keep adding salt and it keeps dissolving, so it's not quite saturated yet. I'm going to add some more, but this is pink Himalayan sea salt is in here. So since I don't have access to my salt, I'm going to take some of this Soleil water because I need another salt solution. I need it salted, so I'm going to put 2 tablespoons. Now, Soleil water is designed for you to put 1 teaspoon in 8 ounces of water. Let me say that again. 1 teaspoon in 8 ounces of water, and drink that in the morning when you first get up. Because salt, real salt, not the table salt, is needed for your body. Salt, real salt, like sea salt, Himalayan salt, is needed, as well as potassium and magnesium. You know how they talk about electrolytes? You know, what do they give you in the hospital? A saline solution, salt. Now they tell you not to eat a lot of salt, and this is the, you know, this is the amount. Your body will expel the salt it doesn't need. Alright, so I'm putting in the cabbage in the jar. And I'll push it down a little bit. See, at home I have a wooden tapper, a thing that you use to put pastry crust in a small, like the small muffin pans, in order if you're going to make like some mini quiches, which is one of the things I've done. Now remember, this is 3/4 of the head of cabbage. My other video, and I'll put the name of it down at the bottom as soon as I do it, because I'm doing these the same day. The other 1/4 of this cabbage I cooked with eggplant. because I didn't think the whole cabbage would fit in here. But it may have, because I'm still pushing this down really tight. And that's what you do with this. Pressing this down. Yeah, I only need that cup, not a cup and a half. I thought maybe I'd need a cup and a half of water, but I think all I'm going to need is a cup. And see, there's already salt on the cabbage. Press this down really good, and there's some liquid. There's some liquid in there, but you can't see much of it. And now, most of these are going to be, some of them are floating on top. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go get it now. Okay, I've taken the time, washed the outside of the bag and dried it off with a little bit of colloidal silver. And I mentioned that earlier. In fact, let me go get some, I'll show you. I don't need it as strong as it is in the bottle. It stays in a brown bottle. I make my own. So another day I'll talk about that. So there's the colloidal silver. And I'm going to put the outside of the bag in it. So what I'm doing, colloidal silver is an antimicrobial, antibacterial. So it will kill anything on the outside of this bag, and this bag is new. I'm going to take my distilled water, and I'm going to put some in here. How much? Maybe a little bit more. Okay. Now, I'm going to Ziploc it closed. Take most of the air out. So now I have distilled water in this bag, and I am going to put this bag, it probably have too much liquid in here right now. Let's put the bag in here, and I put the bag in, yep, too much liquid. Just a little bit too much. And that's salt water. And so what this is going to do is it's going to hold down as much as possible. Still not enough, because I want it near the neck. Yeah, like that. And what this is going to do, that's my water, it's going to hold the cabbage down below the water level. And then I'm going to put the lid on, but I'm not going to close it all the way. I'm just going to put the lid on just like this. Now when I go to take it home from here, when I go home, I'll screw it back on and then I'll loosen the lid because I still need some air to get in there for the fermentation process. Just a little bit, but not a lot. So that's my cabbage. You can see the cabbage in there. A little liquid overflow is not bad. And it's salt water. And then this is going to sit for about 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. And I'm going to let you see it when it completes. But in the meantime, I could have taken the outer leaves of the cabbage and put it over the top to hold the cabbage down into the water. But in this case, I put this little plastic bag about it. There are also discs that'll fit, like in the beginning of this, glass disc that people have to do that. When I get home, I can transfer it into a regular canning jar, and then I have a little air valve kind of thing that I use when I'm doing that. And so I'll take a video of that. But this is doing it in my camper with what I have. And so I'm using it, and we'll see what happens. I just cooked up a bunch of cabbage that I had, but this isn't much. This is like buying a can of cabbage in the store. So again, this is sauerkraut for 1 or 2. And so it will, the next part of this video, you'll see me either taking it out and putting it in the other container, or it'll be finished. So this is Beverly Fells Jones, the Silver Fox of Consciousness. As you have believed, let it be done to you, and it is so.